Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be diving deep into the world of Bob Camblin, um, an artist whose work it seems you find pretty captivating.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sent in quite a collection, quotes, artwork, even some reviews about a book he illustrated. So he clearly made you think.
Yeah, what really stands out to me is there's so much that we don't know about Camblin. Not a lot of biographical information out there, which I think just makes him all the more intriguing. It's like we have to kind of piece together who he was from these fragments, like these scattered fragments of his life and work.
Exactly, it's like a puzzle, right? But even without a traditional biography, there's this strong sense of Camblin's personality that shines through in everything you sent.
Hmm.
He's got these really thought-provoking quotes,
Yeah.
often short, a bit quirky, almost like poetic riddles.
Yeah, like take this one. Fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years, perhaps. And it's about time and eternity, but with a wink, right? Like a touch of humor. You get the sense that he wasn't a man who took himself too seriously.
No, he definitely had a playful way with words.
Yeah.
And then there's this one. I will stick with common sense and try for the perfectly average view of the universe, and hope that I can be around when the two meet in the near future, and we have an intensely bright gray.
This one I think really gets to the core of what makes Camblin so fascinating. He's not satisfied with easy answers or black and white thinking.
Right.
That bright gray isn't just a color, it's like a metaphor for his whole approach to life and art, finding that point where seemingly opposing forces kind of meet and blend together.
Like he's seeking balance between logic and intuition, between the scientific and the mystical, not rejecting either side, but trying to find a synthesis.
Exactly. Yeah. He's not picking a side. He's looking for that higher understanding that embraces both. And we see this reflected in his art, too.
Yeah. And speaking of his art, you sent in some really interesting material about a book that he illustrated, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment. And the reviews that you included described his illustrations as visual koans, which might sound confusing if you're not familiar with Zen Buddhism.
Right. A koan is like a riddle or paradoxical statement that Zen Buddhists use to provoke thought. It's not meant to have like a logical answer, but rather to help you break free from conventional ways of thinking and experience a deeper level of understanding.
So how does that relate to Camblin's art?
Well, just like a koan, Camlin's illustrations aren't meant to be simply, decoded. They present you with these visual puzzles that might seem simple at first glance, but the more you look at them, the more layers of meaning you kind of uncover.
Like that watercolor that you chose to focus on. Crystal Skull.
Yes. Crystal Skull is like a perfect example of what we're talking about. It's like a visual microcosm of Camblin's philosophy. You've got all these seemingly disparate elements of vibrant potted plant, an ethereal crystal skull, pyramids in the background.
And then there's that tiny self-portrait hidden within the facets of one of the pyramids. I love that detail.
It's brilliant. Yeah, the self-portrait adds this whole other layer of meaning. It connects Camblin himself, the artist, to these bigger themes that he's exploring in the painting.
Right.
He's not just an observer, he's part of this cycle of life and death and creation.
It reminds me of that other quote of his. In the balance, patience, and yet. Freedom, again, and yet. In silence, the reality can be maintained. It's like he's saying that even though life is full of contradictions, it's in that tension, that space between that we find meaning and create our own reality.
And Crystal Skull is all about that tension, that balance. You have the potted plant representing life and growth juxtaposed with the crystal skull, a symbol of mortality and the passage of time. It's a classic Vanitas motif, actually.
Vanitas motif.
Yeah, it's a common theme in art, especially still life painting, where objects are used to symbolize the fleeting nature of life and the inevitability of death. Think skulls, wilting flowers, hourglasses, those sorts of things.
So Camblin's playing with that tradition, but adding his own twist.
Exactly. And then you've got those pyramids in the background, which introduce yet another layer of symbolism.
Something ancient, enduring, maybe even hinting at civilizations that have come and gone, yet left their mark on the world. It's like he's juxtaposing the fleeting nature of individual life with the permanence of these structures, these echoes of the past.
That's a great observation. He's reminding us that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Right.
A continuum that stretches back through history and will continue long after we're gone.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it that way. And there's another quote that seems relevant here. The light is all you need. The end is to evolve by doing the best you can. It's like he's suggesting that the journey itself is the point, that continual growth and striving to be our best selves. That's the essence of life.
I see that connection too. And that light that he mentions, it could be a metaphor for knowledge awareness, maybe even that bright gray we talked about earlier. Remember that cylinder with the golden glow right in the center of Crystal Skull? It's almost like a beacon illuminating the scene, drawing our attention to that interplay between life and death, growth and decay. It's like a source of energy or inspiration emanating from within the painting.
That's a really insightful observation. It brings to mind another one of his quotes. The means is to amplify what you're doing and believe. It's almost like he's saying that belief fuels creation, that our actions are magnified when we invest them with conviction.
And that's certainly true of art, right? The act of creating art is all about amplifying your vision, taking something from your inner world and making it visible, tangible. It's like you're giving form to your beliefs, to the things that matter to you.
And that makes me think about another quote you sent. Sublime in the ridiculous so far. Look for the forgotten, but become what you are. Less only is. Such a classic Camblin quote, full of poetry and paradox. It's like he's urging us to find beauty in the unexpected, meaning in the overlooked. He's challenging us to embrace our true selves, to shed pretense, to become fully who we are, because anything less is a diminishment of our potential.
I agree. It's like he's saying, don't try to be someone you're not. Don't chase after external validation. True fulfillment comes from within, from aligning with your authentic self.
And maybe, just maybe, that alignment, that embrace of authenticity is what allows us to tap into the sublime in the ridiculous, to see the world with fresh eyes, to discover beauty in the most unexpected places. I really like that idea. And it reminds me of how Camblin talked about the need to make marks, how it's something primal and instinctive, something that predates language.
I was just thinking about that. He saw art as a way of connecting with something deeper within ourselves, something beyond words, something that speaks directly to our intuition. And he wasn't afraid to play with that intuition, to let it guide his creative process. He even described drawing as a way of allowing the rational mind to be occupied, while the natural flowing Zazen mind could take over and lead to the hunch, the inspiration, the solution.
Zazen mind. That sounds pretty zen.
It is. Zazen is a form of meditation in Zen Buddhism, and it's all about quieting the chatter of the conscious mind and allowing a deeper, more intuitive state of awareness to emerge. It's like he's saying that true creativity comes from a place of surrender, of letting go of conscious control and allowing something deeper to emerge.
It's like letting go of the reins and trusting your gut, not trying to force it, but creating the conditions for inspiration to strike. And maybe that's what Camblin was doing with his art, creating spaces for us, the viewers, to experience that same sense of wonder, that spark of recognition, that aha moment where we see the world anew.
It's a beautiful way to put it. It's like he's inviting us to join him on this journey of discovery, to open ourselves to new possibilities, to embrace the paradoxical and the profound, and to find meaning in the unexpected. He even said, we can train ourselves to open instead of close the circuits of perception.
It's like he's suggesting that our perception of the world is malleable, that we can learn to see things differently, to expand our awareness, to be more open to new experiences and ideas. And art can definitely do that right. Shift our perceptions, make us see the familiar in a new light, challenge our assumptions. It's not just intellectually stimulating, it's emotionally resonant. It makes you think, it makes you feel, and sometimes it makes you laugh all at the same time.
You put that really well. And speaking of laughter, let's not forget Camblin's sense of humor. Remember that line? When understood, all truth is funny.
Yeah.
It's classic Camblin, pointing out the absurdity of life, the fact that even the most profound truths can be tinged with humor.
He's like, don't take yourself or the world too seriously. There's always room for laughter, for a bit of lightness, even when grappling with the big questions. And that's what makes his work so engaging. You never know what to expect. Like that line about the fly, it wouldn't be so bad to come back as a fly if you knew your body would shine in the sun that way.
He takes something so ordinary, even a little repulsive, and finds beauty in it, a reason for wonder. It's like he's saying, don't dismiss the everyday, the overlooked. There's magic to be found everywhere if you're willing to look for it.
I love that. And that willingness to look, to really see, to find that bright gray that's at the heart of Camblin's artistic philosophy, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it's a philosophy that's relevant for anyone. Whether you're an artist or just trying to navigate this crazy world, it's a reminder to be present, to pay attention, be open to the wonders that surround us, even in the midst of the everyday.
You know, we keep talking about Camblin's bright gray, but he also had a lot to say about the tension between knowing and believing.
Oh, that's a fascinating aspect of his thinking, he said. Believing and knowing are different, Most people practice a belief or a religion they were raised in. Mystics know something else. It's like he's saying that there's a difference between intellectual understanding and experiential knowing.
And maybe for Camblin, art was a way of bridging that gap, of accessing a deeper level of understanding that transcended words or concepts. He seemed to suggest that mystics have experienced something that goes beyond belief, something that can't be explained by logic or reason.
I think you're right, and maybe that's why his work is so evocative, so thought-provoking. It's not just about what we see on the surface, it's about what we feel, what we intuit, what resonates with us on a deeper level. He's tapping into something universal, something that speaks to the human condition, regardless of our individual beliefs or backgrounds.
I really like that. And all of this just from a few quotes and one watercolor.
We've only just begun to explore the world of Bob Camblin. There's so much more to unpack, so many layers to uncover.
Speaking of layers, we keep mentioning Camblin's evolving style. It's a
Yeah.
constant experimentation. But he also seemed to have some complicated feelings about the art world's obsession with novelty, right?
Yeah, he did. Camlin talked about how it was challenging to, balance his own desire to go deeper with this pressure to constantly churn out something new for the market. There's this quote where he says, just as you arrive at a technique that allows you to do the concepts that interest you, you become aware that in this disposable art culture, that the novelty is part of the looking. It's like he felt this tension between his artistic vision and this demand for something fresh, something that would, grab people's attention.
I can see how that would be frustrating, especially for someone like Camblin, who seems so interested in exploring deeper themes, not just surface-level trends.
Yeah.
Did he talk about how he navigated that tension?
He did. He actually said something pretty bold. The artist today is the only free agent. He is not committed except so much as he desires it.
Wow, that's quite a statement. It sounds like he ultimately prioritized his own creative exploration over trying to please the market.
I think you're right. Yeah, he valued that freedom
Hmm.
to experiment, to evolve, to follow his own path, even if it wasn't the most popular or commercially viable one.
Which brings us back to Crystal's Fill. We've talked about the symbolism, the balance between life and death, the artist's place within that cycle.
Hmm.
But what about the actual style of the painting itself? How does that fit into Camblin's evolving approach to art?
That's a great question. Crystal Skull is a watercolor, which is interesting because, Camlin worked in a lot of different mediums throughout his career. He didn't limit himself to just one style or technique.
So even his choice of medium was part of his exploration.
It seems that way, yeah. Remember how he talked about the need to make marks as something primal and instinctive? It's like he saw every new material, every new approach as a way to connect with that deeper impulse, that creative urge that drives the artist to make something new.
That's really fascinating. It makes you look at Crystal Skull differently, knowing that it wasn't just a random choice of medium. He was intentionally choosing watercolor to express these specific ideas.
And think about the qualities of watercolor itself. The way it flows, the transparency, the way the colors blend and bleed into each other. Those qualities are reflected in the themes of the painting itself. The fluidity of time, the interconnectedness of life and death, the merging of opposites.
That's a great point. It's like the medium itself is part of the message.
And that's something you see throughout Camblin's work. He was always looking for new ways to push the boundaries, to experiment with form and style, to find the perfect visual language for the ideas that he wanted to express.
And that makes me think about something else you mentioned earlier, the they mind. It's like he's not just experimenting with materials and techniques, but with his own state of mind as well. He's cultivating that openness, that willingness to let go of control and allow inspiration to take over.
Exactly. And that's where the magic happens, where the truly innovative, unexpected ideas come from.
So Camblin wasn't just an artist, he was a kind of philosopher too.
Definitely, yeah. He was deeply engaged with these big questions about life, death, meaning, perception, and the power of art to illuminate those questions.
And he wasn't afraid to challenge conventional ways of thinking, to embrace paradox, to find humor in the face of the unknown.
Exactly. He was a true original.
I'm curious, what else did he have to say about the role of the artist?
Well, there's a quote where he says, art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake.
That's really interesting. It sounds like he saw art as having a larger purpose, a responsibility to engage with the world beyond just creating something beautiful.
I agree. For Camblin, art wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about grappling with the human experience, about finding meaning and connection in a complex world. He even saw it as a form of survival, a way to make sense of life's challenges.
And maybe that's why his work resonates so strongly with us even today. It's not just visually appealing, it's meaningful. It speaks to something deeper within us.
I think you're right. His work invites us to look beyond the surface, to engage with those big questions that he was wrestling with.
Thinking about all this, it makes me wonder about something. We've been talking about Camblin as this incredibly insightful philosophical figure, but he was also a working artist, someone who had to navigate the realities of the art market. Did he ever talk about that side of things, the practical aspects of being an artist?
He did. And it's fascinating to see how his philosophical ideas play out in the practical realm of, making a living as an artist. Remember how we talked about his evolving style, his constant experimentation?
Yeah, and how he seemed to prioritize that freedom over chasing trends or trying to please the market.
Exactly. But he was also aware of the need to connect with an audience, to find people who resonated with his work.
So how did he balance those competing demands?
Well, there's a quote where he talks about the importance of staying true to your vision while also being aware of the context in which your work is being seen. He said, just as you arrive at a technique that allows you to do the concepts that interest you, you become aware that in this disposable art culture that the novelty is part of the looking. So ideas can change, but the viewer demands new techniques from the artist if he is watching him for a period of time.
It's like he's acknowledging the reality that people get bored. They want to see something new, something different.
Exactly. But he's not suggesting that artists should simply chase trends. He's talking about finding a way to evolve, to keep things fresh, while still staying true to your core values and your artistic vision.
It's a tricky balance.
It is. And I think Camlin found a way to do it. He was constantly experimenting, pushing the boundaries of his own style, but he never lost sight of the deeper themes and ideas that drove his work.
It's like he was able to find that sweet spot between innovation and integrity.
Exactly. He was able to stay true to himself while also engaging with the world around him.
And that's something we can all learn from, whether we're artists or not.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between staying true to your own values and being open to new experiences, new ideas, and new ways of seeing the world.
It's about finding your own bright gray.
Exactly. And that's something that Camblin seems to have mastered.
Thinking about all this makes me want to go back and look at Crystal Skull again.
Me too. It's like every time we talk about Camblin, the painting reveals something new.
It's like he's still speaking to us through his art, challenging us to think differently, to see the world with fresh eyes.
And that's the power of great art. It's timeless. It transcends the boundaries of time and space and continues to resonate with us long after the artist is gone.
And speaking of timelessness, Camblin had a really interesting perspective on that, didn't he?
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Remember that quote where he said, "There is no time but a great deal of it"? It's like he's playing with our usual understanding of time, suggesting that it's both an illusion and a reality.
It's like he's saying that time is what we make it. We can get caught up in the rush of daily life, or we can choose to slow down, to savor the moment, to appreciate the beauty and wonder that surrounds us.
And that's a powerful message, especially in today's world where everything seems to be moving so fast.
It's a reminder to step back, to take a breath, to remember what's truly important.
Exactly. And I think that's something Camblin was really good at doing. He found a way to slow down, to observe, to contemplate, and to express those insights through his art.
And he invites us to do the same, to look deeper, to question our assumptions, to find meaning in the unexpected, and to embrace the paradoxical nature of life.
I think you've captured the essence of Bob Camblin perfectly.
And on that note, I think it's time to shift gears and talk about some of the other aspects of Camblin's work that you sent over. You included some quotes about his creative process, his approach to drawing, and even some of his thoughts on spirituality.
Oh, yes. I'm excited to dive into those, especially his ideas about drawing. He had some really fascinating things to say about that.
All right, let's explore that next. I'm really curious to hear what Camblin had to say about drawing and how it fits into his overall artistic philosophy. Okay, so we've talked about Camblin's paintings. We talked about his use of symbolism, his philosophical ideas, but you also sent in some material about his drawings, which seemed like a whole other side of his artistic personality.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting how Camblin talked about drawing as a way to access a different kind of creativity. He said, drawing is thinking the purest state.
The purest state. What do you think he meant by that?
I think for him, he saw drawing as this direct connection between his mind and the paper. No colors, no complex compositions, just the raw essence of his ideas flowing through his hand. There's a quote where he says, you are not thinking of looks. You are thinking of function, how this thing will work, move, fly, or flow.
It's like he's emphasizing the functionality of drawing, how it's a tool for, problem solving,
Yeah.
for exploring ideas,
Mm.
for figuring things out, not just about creating something beautiful,
Yeah.
but about understanding how things work.
Exactly, yeah. And that ties into his whole philosophy of finding that bright gray between logic and intuition.
Right.
Drawing for him was a way to bridge that gap, to engage both his analytical mind and his creative impulses.
It reminds me of that quote where he talks about how the rational mind can say, I am drawing, while the natural flowing Zazen mind covers many things. And in our playing the hunch, the inspiration, the solution seems to magically appear. It's like he's saying that drawing allows him to tap into a deeper level of creativity, one that's not bound by logic or conscious thought.
Exactly. It's about letting go of control, trusting your intuition, and allowing the drawing to unfold organically.
And that's something we've seen throughout Camblin's work, right? That willingness to experiment, to embrace the unexpected, to find those moments of serendipity where something truly new emerges.
It's like he's saying that the real magic happens when you step outside of your comfort zone, when you allow yourself to be surprised by the process.
And that's a valuable lesson for anyone, not just artists. Whether you're working on a creative project, trying to solve a problem, or just navigating life's challenges, it's helpful to remember that sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places.
Absolutely. And it all comes back to Camblin's core belief in finding that balance, that bright gray where seemingly opposite forces can coexist and inform each other. It's about embracing the paradoxical nature of life. The fact that we can be both logical and intuitive, both playful and serious, both grounded in reality and open to the mysteries of the universe.
It's about seeing the world with fresh eyes, finding beauty in the unexpected, and trusting the journey even when you don't know where it's going to lead.
You've summed it up beautifully. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree. So to our listener who sparked this deep dive into the world of Bob Camblin, we hope this has been a journey of discovery for you as well. We've explored his paintings, his drawings, his words, and his unique way of seeing the world. We've uncovered layers of meaning, challenged assumptions, and hopefully sparked some new ideas along the way.
And remember that quote we keep coming back to, we can train ourselves to open instead of close the circuits of perception. Keep those circuits open, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep searching for your own bright gray out there in the world.